that could be dangerous too. To say, hey, you've been trying something for so long. Why don't you try something different? Different could be better, but different could also be worse.
You just said a lot, Candace. So let's talk about some of these.
She is saying a lot, like, but she don't sound crazy to me. She seems like she's trying to educate us. That's what it seems like. She's just trying to educate us.
I'm gonna fall on my knees, humble myself and say, Lord, I need a little more help. Can you just make a way?
What's going on, Ink Society? Vonnie here, back with another reaction. I feel like there's a lot of people who want me to react to this. Listen, I don't have any opinions on Candace Owens. I really don't get into politics like that. So I'm really going to listen with a fresh ear. Because some people love her, but some people hate her. She got to be good at what she does, because if you get a lot of hate, you might be doing something right. You might be doing something right. I don't know what it is, but you might be doing something right. All right. I'm going to really listen to her. I want to know if she's just like outrageous from what I've been hearing. You know, people say she is white supremacist or supports white supremacy, or I don't even know. Let's just see. Let's just listen to her and figure it out. And I'll give you my honest opinion.
I actually should have messaged you my new number.
Where did all this begin for Candace Owens?
Okay.
You know, I feel like I have just a very regular story. Like I said, like I was born in New York, raised in Stamford. There was nothing, particularly that stood out in my childhood that made me think that I was going to go into politics.
Hold on, she said
I feel like I landed into politics kind of accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
And I say accidentally because
we got a little something in common. I was born in New York, raised in New York, also raised in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and then Baltimore, Maryland. So shout out to all three of those places. I just have to say where I'm from. Okay, I just have to state where I'm from. That's all.
I thought I was a liberal my whole life. You know, I thought I was on the left my whole life, and really didn't pay attention to politics in any meaningful way. And then, you know, when Trump was running for office,
I know I'm stopping it, but she just said something real. My government teacher, shout out to Streets. Shout out to Miss Streets. She gave us a paper. I remember she gave us a just like an assignment. She gave us a worksheet that had us answering questions. And based on the way you answered the question would determine whether or not you were liberal or conservative. And I remember it, or Republican or whatever. I think mine came out as either conservative or Republican. And I ended up erasing some answers, changing some answers to make it. This was high school, y'all. Okay. I ended up changing some answers to make sure I was Democrat or a liberal. Crazy. But she knew what she was doing with that worksheet.
I didn't want him to be elected. I was like, this, not because I thought he was a racist or a sexist, but just because I thought it was crazy to go from Obama, who had a certain decorum about him, to suddenly this sort of brash New Yorker. But I thought it was weird when all of a sudden the people that liked Trump, you know, everyone thought he was like this iconic symbol of business. He was in rap songs. Trump was a status, flipped on him in 1 second.
I was saying that because we all grow up thinking, you know, we got to be attached to a certain party because we're black or because we look a certain way, when that's not really the case. Like,
didn't buy the narrative that he was in the media for 3-4 decades, and suddenly you wanted me to believe overnight that he was like Adolf Hitler and a racist. So I just didn't trust the media's narrative about him, and so I decided to actually listen to what he said. I still didn't vote for him in 2016, but I wanted to just listen to what he actually said. And then when I saw what he was saying,
y'all gotta remember, when Trump is out in public, I've said something like this in another video, Trump is marketing. Every president, every candidate is marketing. I know this because I have a book that basically put his marketing plan. It's a marketing book. It basically showed how Trump's team was so great at marketing that, I mean, it led to him becoming president.
versus how it was.
Now, he probably shouldn't have been there. They probably was scamming and all types of ish, but you know what it is.
Reported, I just found it to be extremely dishonest. So I started researching more, learning more, and then I got kind of angry, like just with the lies, because I do think Black Americans are intentionally manipulated emotionally by the media, and kind of kept dumb but emotional intentionally by the school system. And I started reading up on like Thomas Sowell, Shelby Steele, a bunch of Black scholars I originally had dismissed as Uncle Toms. And irony now is I get called an Uncle Tom all the time. So I got what was coming.
Black Americans, Black people are kept dumb by public schools. Well, I mean, there are white people going to these public schools as well. But I think when you start not teaching us about our history, that becomes a problem. Or when our history is slavery, that's a problem. So there I can agree to a certain extent. We're kept, like, why are we learning about that? Like, it's almost like they wanted us to see, because we started learning about slavery in like 5th grade, that we were below white people, and that this is the way society is. Seriously, that's why I don't watch slave movies anymore. They're crazy.
But yeah, and then I realized that actually I've always been a conservative. I just didn't know it. And economically speaking, of course, the conservative arguments make the most sense.
Does that bother you that people call you an Uncle Tom?
No, not at all. First off, because if they read the book, Uncle Tom was the hero. But also because I get it. How can I fault people for something that I would have engaged in for the majority of my life? I thought the same thing about Black conservatives. Like, I thought it was this betrayal, but I never actually understood it. It was just an emotional response. And I think that kind of is, if you come out of the public school system, I can't imagine how you could be a Black conservative when just the way that they even tell us our own history is just not true,
Do you think that that's true with most people though? Like, like when you think
I
of
disagree
a Trump or
there.
just
You can
anybody,
come out a certain way.
You're fine with them, but then you learn like their politics, or you learn what they believe spiritually, and then you're like, you're turned off from it.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's necessarily the politics. I really do think the media plays the biggest part in it, because Trump, as far as I know, Trump's been, maybe he used to be a Democrat, but he's been a Republican and a conservative for a long time. I mean, we know he had to have been a conservative in terms of economics. He's wealthy, so you'd be hard pressed to find someone that's wealthy and advocating for Marxist beliefs. But yeah, I just feel like it's more about the media wants power. The media has a vested interest in things politically, and they like to make us think that we're having this open conversation and we're learning the truth about people. But these are just hatchet smear jobs, libeling people, and I think deluding a ton of people to turn against their own best interests.
So were you more anti-media as opposed to being pro-Trump?
Well, no, I actually, once I actually heard what he had to say, I was like, that's a pretty solid pitch. I mean, it was his Dimondale, Michigan speech particularly. He got up there and he just started listing all of the statistics in Black America in terms of poverty. I mean, these were just real statistics that he was talking about. And his pitch was basically like, you've been giving your vote to Democrats for 60 years. Why don't you just try something different? I think that's a pretty good elevator pitch. Like, hey, you've been doing the same thing for a long time. I'm not saying I'm amazing, but why don't we try something different and see if it gets better for you? And then suddenly I flipped over to CNN and it was Don Lemon's crying. I think it was, I'm maybe being, but it was just, they were so dramatic. And
that could be dangerous too. To say, hey, you've been trying something for so long. Why don't you try something different? Different could be better, but different could also be worse. We shouldn't listen to that pitch alone just because we want something different. We should understand what each candidate is bringing to the table. And if I'm speaking for myself as a black person, I will want to know what this person plans to do for black people. Like, I would need to understand that.
Lying about what he said. They're like, he looked you in the face and told you you were poor. Like, I'm like, that's not what he did at all. So I just got interested. I'm a very curious, interested person. If I get interested in something, I will just take it all the way, read books. And I'm like, why are they doing this? Like, why are all the media companies that I believed my whole life just lying about it? Just say what he actually said and let Black Americans decide for themselves if that's a good enough pitch. They may have said no. I thought it was interesting, but
I don't disagree with Candace talking about the media. It's the reason why I'm building a media company, because I've seen how the media can shape your thoughts, can shape your reality, can tell you what to believe. That's real. That's just real. That's just what's happening. You think you go to the news to get informed? You may be getting informed, but you may also be misinformed. Straight up. Straight up. So you do have to be careful to what you're watching and what you're listening to and what you allow into your mind.
lying is something that I think is outrageous. It's gotten out of control.
I think it's worse now. I think it's worse now because not only do you have people who will just create the headlines based off what they feel you said as opposed to what you said. You have people that are just straight up manipulate your audio, manipulate your video, just to push a narrative.
One of the wildest things, the craziest things that people say about me all the time, and it drives me crazy because it's literally made up. They're like, Candace said racism doesn't exist. If you go find that headline of Candace says racism doesn't exist, they didn't put it in quotation marks because I never said it. They were like, Candace said racism doesn't exist because she's quote unquote never been a slave. The words never been a slave came out of my mouth, but I never said racism doesn't exist. And it was in the context of an entire speech. The media knew that Black people were not going to go watch the speech or try to find the original speech. They were just going to read the headline and react and be like, oh my God, Candace Owens said racism doesn't exist. Like, how could she say this? She's a hypocrite. She's a liar. This happened to her in her childhood.
Yeah, you sued your high school for racism.
Yeah,
So
well,
clearly,
it's actually not that's not what happened. I didn't sue my high school for racism.
Not
But
protecting you during that time, I said, right?
oh,
They said for not protecting you. They
I
said,
just did to you what the media does.
yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
no, it's fine. I mean, I get it because it's something that I've talked about at length. But essentially, I had this situation happen to me in high school where someone that I was actually best friends with left me horrific voicemails. They were racist voicemails. There's no other way to slice it.
They called you a nigga because you didn't want to date him.
No, he actually, I think he was gay, to be honest. It was nothing about dating. I think this was kind of a circumstance of like,
You know what's crazy? Going to a PWI, which I went to in middle school and college for a couple of years. I never really, but I'm talking about my college experience. I never really went into the racism I experienced at a predominantly white institution. Like, my teammates would talk a certain way. Like, I had a couple that would just say really ignorant things. One girl was like, she was talking about another black girl. She's like, oh my gosh, she talks white. She talks white. I said white. This is during practice too, because I was on a basketball team. I'm like, white is not a language. But I'm like, damn, like I didn't even really understand what I was walking into. But there were so many racist situations during those 2 years. It was kind of weird. Like, I almost ended up regretting going to a predominantly white institution for that reason. I really wanted to go to a HBCU, but I wasn't Was I being recruited? I was being recruited by one HBCU, but they didn't have the money. Like, it wasn't, I think it wasn't a full scholarship. I had to go with the full scholarship. But I won't say I regret it, but man, like, there are things that go down. There are things that are said. There's some ignorant stuff that happens, and I think I just regret not voicing my opinion, like not correcting certain things. Maybe they learn later on in life, but I don't know. A lot of times I just observed it and just
had my first
let me
year.
keep it moving.
I'll be honest, I got a boyfriend and I just stopped hanging out with my friends. Very typical high school stupid stuff. And this gay guy that I was friends with was like outraged by it. And one night he was out drinking with kids that were way younger than him that I had never met, and they left me horrific voicemails. I mean, like, bringing in like Rosa Parks. There was tons of threats.
You did what?
They were just like, it was, like it was, there was no way to slice it, but it was, they were extremely racist. And it was terrifying too, because I didn't know who the phone calls were coming from. Long story short, one of the kids in the car happened to be the governor of Connecticut's son. So it became this sort of overnight political story. And while it was going on and there were like news cameras in front of the school, I left school and just homeschooled for, I think it was about 6 to 8 weeks. And basically we got reimbursed for the time that I was homeschooling is what happened. But yeah, so when people retell that story now, it's like she sued her school for racism and the NAACP helped her. And I'm like, no, the NAACP did not help me. They used my face and my name to fundraise for the NAACP, which is actually the reason why I don't like the NAACP. It's like a very valid reason, because I was a little girl, I was 16, 17 years old, and it was a really hard situation to go through as a child. I'm not.
Now, Candace, if you're a logical person, you now understand that business is business. Marketing is marketing. You don't like the NAACP because they used your face. But did you grow to understand more about them? That's what I'm curious about. Because I'm just catching little things. And it's like, okay, something happened to you as a child, which I get could have been just, horrific. But as you got older, what? Did you look more into the NAACP? And I'm just asking questions. Just as a viewer, you're saying quick things, like you're just like blurting out things that can alter the way someone sees the NAACP. So, you know what I mean? Like, you sometimes just gotta catch certain things, like, okay. But it does make me want to look more into the NAACP.
I am now 34 years old and married with that support system. It was kind of fame you don't want, But I'm actually very grateful that it happened to me, because it allowed me to really consider what the media was. Even though I was still a liberal, I knew what the media was. Like, I knew the media was all about selling a headline. I knew then I got an early lesson in the NAACP. I think organizations that never want racism to go away, because how are they going to fundraise? Like, if you're a CEO of the NAACP and you're earning X amount of dollars, you got to keep the racism narrative going on, or you're going to work yourself out of business. So the stuff that I talk about is always based on my experiences, and so it's just crazy to see how it gets manipulated in the press.
Now, you said something.
I knew what the media was. Like, I knew the media was all about selling a headline. I knew then I got an early lesson in the NAACP. I think organizations that never want racism to go away, because how are they going to fundraise? Like, if you're a CEO of the NAACP and you're earning X amount of dollars, you got to keep the racism narrative going on, or you're going to work yourself out of business. So
I'm just thinking. You got to keep racism going on. I think racism will just exist. Racism is just something that will be there. Now, if she means like just to keep pushing the narrative and talking about it and bringing it up, I can see that. But there are always situations that are happening. There's always something to talk about. Because Black people are at a disadvantage in this country. We are 400 years behind. It ain't funny, but it's like, it's real. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't keep it going. It's just...
The stuff that I talk about is always based on my experiences, you know? And so it's just crazy to see how it gets manipulated in the press.
Now, you said something earlier. You said that you wanted to listen to what Trump had to say. You said in 2016, you still didn't vote for him. So looking at the country now, right? Of course, there's Trump, there's Biden. Who do you think is better for our community?
Obviously. Well, first and foremost, just for everybody, you should have a president that's, you know, not mentally deteriorating like Biden is. I mean, he's in full mental deterioration. It's crazy to pretend anything else that's happening right now. It's scary first and foremost because we have real enemies out there, and you have a person that can't lead. You know, he can't remember what he ate for breakfast. He's saying things. I mean, the amount of times that he keeps talking about his dead son as if he's alive, it's very alarming. And I don't say that with any ill will in my heart either, because he's showing signs of when my grandfather, who passed
Trump is old too.
A couple of years ago, started, you know, his mind started diminishing, and you start to see those early signs of dementia. The way he walks, his gait, the way that he's falling.
He's definitely
this is
pushing
crazy.
for Trump.
Everyone should be outraged, whether you're on the left or the right. But in terms of the better candidate for Black Americans, I asked people the question, how were you living under Trump? The person that they told you was going to put us back into chains and we were all going to be slaves again. How was the economy under Trump, and how are you doing today? And every time you ask that question, everyone knows that they were living better under Trump, because he was deregulating the environment, and people were just living better under Trump. And he is, in my opinion, a better president, because at least he's telling you the truth, and he's telling you what he actually thinks. You know, one of the things that I hated the most about him when he first came on the escalator, I was like, oh, he's way too brash. You know, Obama sounds way more polite. But I asked the question, do you want to be politely lied to, or have somebody that's at least...
Okay, she believes Trump is better for Black people. I want to know why, though.
Telling you what they think about you in no uncertain terms. So, you know, I like Trump for a ton of reasons. And for me, it was always about the economic arguments. And I knew that he was going to be a better candidate for Black Americans because of that, especially, you know, build the wall sounded so wild, right? Back in 2016, it sounded wild. It sounded xenophobic. And I was saying, if these illegals get into the inner city communities, the first people that are going to be harmed are going to be Black Americans.
People actually were mad at you, right? When you got into the conversation with T.I. at the Revolt Music Conference, right? And you were saying that, and people didn't understand it, but it seems like people are understanding what you were trying to say back then.
Yeah, and I am so happy to have those moments, because, like, I think T.I. is a trash person. You know, I'll say that 1,000 times over. Damn. Because first and foremost, I had spoken to T.I. prior to that event. Like, T.I. was the only person on stage that I actually knew. And for the same reasons that I met you, Kanye had put us in touch. We had talked, and I know that T.I. thinks more conservatively. So he was literally putting on a show. And so it just makes me wonder, especially with all the stuff that, like, came out in the Diddy lawsuit, like, who's controlling T.I.? Because that was wild. He was literally putting on
I will say this. As an entrepreneur, my business did thrive under Trump's presidency. As an entrepreneur, okay, I'm not pro anybody. I'm just giving y'all the real. That's it. Now, after the pandemic, let's see. Let's see if she talks about that.
Like, he didn't know me on stage. Like, he was surprised I was saying the stuff. He was way more level-headed and rational when we were on the phone. And I still look back on the moment. I'm like, what was he doing? It was like a circus act up there. And he was doing something that I thought was harmful because we were actually having a great discussion. And yet he created a little moment, and that was all the media ran with, despite the fact we were on that stage for hours. They ran with that moment, and I was really upset about it. But you're right. I was talking a lot about illegal immigration and saying this is something that we need to pay attention to, because eventually the black vote's not going to matter. Something that they worked so hard for is not going to matter. They get enough illegals in. What are we at? 10 million under Biden?
Now, I'm not gonna lie. When Trump said build a wall, I was like, yo, he's wilding out. He's wilding out. Like, when you hear something like that, yo, he's bugging. And us, black people, when he says crazy things, we automatically go, this man is crazy. This man is crazy. Instead of looking into why he's saying that and how, and it's weird. It's hard to it's hard because I have a diverse group of friends. I do. So I really don't want to offend anyone. Okay. And I really don't want anyone living a certain way in a different country. It's like a humanity thing. You know what I mean? Like, everything isn't really about money. It's humanity. And so if we're allowing, and I'm just thinking while I'm, y'all just watching me think. If we allow, she said, illegal immigrants into the country, she said it will affect black people first. My question is, how? Is it because whatever benefits we receive, from the government, is it that we start to get less of that? And I don't receive any benefits from any government, bruh. I'm just saying, those who are getting paid by the government or living off the government, is it because of that? Or could it push black people to step up and get out of the mindset of lower class, meaning living off of the government? Where am I going with this? Because I feel like, no, right? Like, to live off of the government, pay my bills, go right ahead. But it's almost like, if you're smart, you use it to get ahead. You use it to get ahead. And I don't know if you're lower class. If you're, lower class, like, you gotta want that, first of all. You gotta want more, because, you messing with my stability. And you want me to take all these risks or whatever to not be stable. I'm going, where am I going? Where am I going? Somebody tell me, where am I going with this? Where am I going? Where am I going? Where am I going? If he builds a wall, it keeps us poor. Is that what she's saying? Or is she saying if he builds if a wall is built, it negatively impacts Black people, but it's still either way impacting Black people because we're not coming up off of it. We can only get worse. Am I tripping? Like, you can't say this impacted Black people. If we're already living off of the government, it is going to impact Black people. It's just, it may make things worse for us. Right? If you're talking about like government assistance, and I'm assuming that's what she's talking about. All right. Let me know if I just went somewhere like crazy with that. I don't know.
And they're doing it intentionally. Like, it's going to be the same thing that they did to Black Americans in the 60s. What Lyndon Baines Johnson did when he established welfareism and the Great Society Act. They want to get these people in, offer them handouts, and turn them into economic slaves that will continue to vote for Democrats because they're getting free handouts. And it's incredibly racist, first and foremost, but because Black Americans are still, a lot of Black Americans, I should say, are still living under this deception that Lyndon Baines Johnson was a good president, even though he was an avowed racist. I mean, he hated Black people. I mean, one of the, so many times, I mean, hard R referring to us as the N-word. I'll have those.
Basically, are we saying somebody is good based on the amount of government assistance we receive? Because I think that's what Candace Owens is saying. But it's all a scheme to get our vote and make us vote Democrat. It doesn't sound crazy. It doesn't sound
voting
crazy.
Democrat for the next 200 years. And this man is being hailed as a hero because he had to sign the Civil Rights Act, essentially with a figurative gun to his head because the country was on fire. You know, JFK had just died, and there were riots in the streets protesting because of racism. And he did not want to sign it, but he did. And with the other hand, he signed the Great Society Act and incentivized welfareism and, you know, programs to incentivize not marrying the Black men. You know, to think that we had government agents knocking on the door, going into the homes of Black women and being like, there better not be a man that lives here. We're just here to check to make sure. If you want this check, Dad can't be home. Every other ill that Black America is facing today is because we've removed fathers from the home. So I am like a big, you know, I use my platform to talk about men.
Whoa, that's something I didn't know. I got to do my research, but that's something I did not know. Damn.
A lot. And the need for male leadership, everything that is so harmful, this, you know, Me Too, false feminism, all of this crap, it's anti-man. And it's anti-man for a reason, because a society cannot survive without strong men. A household cannot survive without strong men. We need strong men to lead homes. And so the fracturing of the Black family, I think, was the test. Like, you know, like we were the mice in the experiment. Like, let's see how that goes. And now they're kind of doing that writ large. And I hate feminism so much. I can't even tell you, because what it's about is it's just an attack on men.
Oh, you just said a lot, Candace. So let's talk about some of these things.
It is saying a lot, like, but she don't sound crazy to me. She seems like she's trying to educate us. That's what it seems like. She's just trying to educate us. What is the big deal?
You said a lot. Now with the
I might
politicians,
pause
right?
this.
Whether it's Lyndon B. Johnson, Trump, Biden, I think people
and do
are
like a
able to
4-part
ignore
interview
a lot
because
of their
I'm
BS
hungry.
as long as they can get something done.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like. So that's why I don't even like to talk about
A 4-part
the
reaction, not
person. I
interview.
like to talk about the policy. So what is the difference between traditional conservatives and MAGA?
Well, I would say between the traditional conservatives and MAGA.
Yeah, like before what the conservative party was before MAGA and what it is now.
Yeah, so I think what you're describing is that there was this fracture in the conservative movement because people realized that when he was referring to the swamp, what he meant was it didn't actually matter if you were on the left or the right. They were all working together in D.C. and selling out all of America. I mean, there is no reason why you go to D.C. and become a multimillionaire. You're supposed to be there to serve the American people. You're there taking our tax dollars. So what was happening was these lobbying interests, like, you know, Big Pharma goes down and they lobby and they'll offer money to a candidate to go push a drug, like the COVID vaccine, or they'll lobby for war. It's like, you know, biggest lobby, of course, military industrial.
I'm not gonna lie. I regret getting vaccinated. I'm not gonna lie. Like, can somebody tell me what I can drink to get rid of it, to remove it from my body? I feel like my body was never the same after it. I'm telling you.
So we're all suffering. You're going to work because these lobbyists are getting their incentives done by buying out these politicians. And so Trump kind of hit the scene as somebody who wasn't bought and paid for because he didn't need their money. He wasn't like a random congressman going to DC with no money. And he just started talking about the swamp. Like, it's not even Republican or Democrat. And I want people to wake up to that, because I'm not here like ride or die for Republicans. They all sell us out. Like, the stuff that they did during COVID is criminal. It's criminal. And
Who was found on that?
Like, I mean, just the free handouts. First off, trillions of dollars. You're signing these omnibus bills. If you read into it, where that money is going, it's insane. It's literally going, to museums, boards of museums. They're quite literally money laundering is what's happening when they sign these bills. But they keep it so that the information level is so low for Americans that it's like, oh, COVID's so bad. Like, we're going to give you a check that's like, $300. This basically describes welfarism, right? Like, despite the fact that there's been trillions of dollars since the establishment of welfare, Black Americans are poorer today than we were before it. People don't know this, but during the time of Jim Crow, before welfare was established in the 1950s, Black Americans were actually outpacing white Americans in this country in terms of economic growth. And the reason for that was because our families were together. We had good values. The government only wants to give you the bare minimum. But where's the rest of the money? Where is it going? They sign these bills making you think that this money is going to you. It's not.
Now, we could have came up off of the pandemic too. We could have came up off of the pandemic. The problem could be financial literacy. Or the fact that we had to pay bills. I don't know. When people got laid off. I don't know. I don't know if it was just one problem though.
They're stealing from the American people. And you look at your congressman, whoever it is that you guys sent down to DC, and you realize that they're all just puppets. I feel like we're watching a performance, and who can say the most outrageous thing. The Republicans don't want to sign this because they want, slavery and they want you back in chains. The Democrats don't want to sign this because they want grandma to die. Whatever it is, you're watching to me, it's a play.
That's why I think if you're Black, you shouldn't be beholden to any political party. Democrat or Republican.
Right. I mean, I think that any concept of saying that I am a Republican forever, a Democrat forever is a nonsense. You should always look at the candidates that are running, and any person that is running saying that they want to grow government is your enemy.
Why do you think people give you a lot of backlash for questioning people and having questions? I see all the time with Charlemagne, if we question something that Kamala Harris did, or question something that Joe Biden did, or question somebody that's Democrat did, why do you think our people have so much backlash when you ask so many questions?
Well, because I think that they don't realize that they've been manipulated against their own interests. And a lot of it is, when you start telling the truth, you become a problem to the establishment, right? So if you're the military industrial complex and you want people to just kind of sleepwalk into another war, and I'm sitting here telling you that, Pentagon just can't keep finding the trillions of dollars that they send overseas. They've got this budget and they're sending all this money to Ukraine. And then they say, oh, we don't know where all the money went. It's being laundered and it's being sent back to a very small group of powerful people. And so when you have someone like me who's cutting through all of the emotional arguments, you have to turn that person into persona non grata, right? And what better way to do it than to have their own community attacking them and saying that they're, pro-white or anti-Black. I mean,
I'm not gonna lie. She crazy bold for this. She doesn't sound crazy to me, y'all. I don't know what it is. I mean... What do you want me to, for those who hate Candace Owens, what is it? What is it? And did you actually look into what she was saying? What is it? What is it? She don't sound crazy to me. I get that she'll just say things and you kind of got to catch it and then dissect it. But she's not sounding like that she's not for Black people. She's not
nonsense
sounding
things
like
that they say about me. If you listen to what I'm actually saying, I'm sitting here providing a blueprint for Black Americans to get ahead because it's time, okay? It's time. We've been doing this for a very long time in this country. Black America, wake up, okay? They don't like you. They don't like us, okay? There's
So you're not anti-
They is
America
government.
has,
There's
yes.
government.
America.
Yeah, like the government, the American government, why would you think the American government wants to help you? Well, at what point in history has that proven to be right? And I'll challenge that and
That's
I'll make
my
it wider
question.
to all Americans. When has it ever been the circumstance that you felt that the government really just was out for your own best interests? Think of them as a corporation. They want to grow themselves. They want new departments, bigger departments, larger budgets like any other corporation would want. And they never want to leave DC because we don't have term limits, which we should have, right? If we had term limits and said you can only serve for 4 years, well, then guess what they would be doing for those 4 years? Trying to shrink government because they'd have to come back out and be us, right? When you look at the way that your tax dollars are being spent, you should be outraged. You should be angry, but stop thinking
I
that
agree.
the enemy is, they constantly have us arguing against each other, women versus men, Black versus white, It's a nonsense. The reason why they want us constantly warring is because it distracts from all of us coming together and taking a look at who the real criminals are. And the real criminals are this small group, this small cadre of powerful people.
All right, that was the first segment, y'all. I got to do this in segments. I'm sorry. That's real. We're always fighting each other. like, for what? For what? That's real. It is a distraction. I agree with that. Like, we really got to start looking into the government and what they are doing and all these policies and stuff being passed affecting our history books and bro, it's getting scary. Okay? And I think I'm gonna just leave it there. What up, Nipsey? I see you over there, bro. I'm gonna leave it right there. Let me know what y'all think. Let me know if I sound crazy. I know I was just trying to dissect it and think about it, and because economically, you gotta think about it. My goal is to build a financial literacy academy. And so, if she's speaking from an economic point of view for Black people, Black Americans, I'm listening. Because I agree, like, it's time for us to get ahead. Like, we're too behind. We need to wake up. So, I agree. I'm looking at who's gonna put us ahead economically. But we also got some other issues to face as Black people. You know what I'm saying? Like, we out here killing each other. We're killing each other. When you look at gang activity, we're killing each other. That's crazy. Why would we kill our own people? But you know what it is? You know what hurts the most? Like, killing each other over neighborhoods we don't own. It's that simple. I don't understand it. I can't comprehend it, and I've never lived that life, so I'm not really trying to speak on it. I'm just like, if you're looking from the outside in, what makes sense about it? Bro, if gangs came together, they could be the new government. Ooh, okay. I'm done off that one. All right, I'm going to do it in segments, y'all. This is a lot. I'm hungry. Peace.